Hello, this is Sheri with Whole Circle Studio, and today I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of the main part of my studio where all the magic happens. I also wanted to run through how I go ahead and baste my quilts, including queen size quilts, in a tiny, or let's say space challenged area. Okay, so here is the main door of my studio and a little sneak peek of where I quilt, I piece, I write my patterns, I do all the billing, the invoicing. This is where it all happens, and including basting up to queen size quilts. So let's get into it. Okay, let's get started with basting. So I based all of my quilts, like I said, including queen and king size, on this table. And I actually have two tables, another one underneath that I'm just storing that comes in handy. I got this table at IKEA. It has removable legs that just screw on that make it really easy, and I can move it all around. The table that I got is about 5.5 feet, or 5 feet by 2.5 feet. So I started by laying my quilt back on the table so the right side is facing the table, so all of the seams are facing up. And it's this beautiful Allison glass chroma fabric that I'm working with today. So I went to Lowe's and picked up these clamps. You could see, you could squeeze them and they open. They're about $3 or $4 each. Maybe they were $2 now that I think about it. And so what I do is I start by putting a clamp. I'll make sure that my quilt back is nice and flat. I'll smooth it out with my hand and I'll clamp it to the table. And I'll put one here, kind of equidistant. So let me do that. So I went ahead and clamped my quilt back to the table, as you could see, and I put them about equidistant. I have 3 on the long edges and 1 on either end. I should have also mentioned, if your quilt is wider than your table, that's okay. This quilt just happened to be the same width as my table, but if it wasn't, I would just let the quilt back drape equally off of both sides. And I should have also mentioned, so this is the top of my quilt and this is the bottom of my quilt, is that before I clamped, I just measured and made sure that this side hanging off and this side hanging off was equal. So I would do the same with the left and the right. And I'll show you how to shift it around. But you won't be able to you probably won't have a table big enough to fit your whole quilt. And even if you could, you wouldn't be able to reach into the middle if the table was that big. So the next step is to layer on the batting. My back is clamped in all of the places. It's nice and flat. There's no buckles. It's not tight, but there's not a lot of give. It's just nice and flat. What I also did was I marked with 2 pins the center of my quilt back. So halfway, the distance halfway this way and halfway this way. So this pin and this pin identify that is my center of the quilt back. And this will be important for when we match up the batting and then when we match up the quilt top so that everything aligns. You have lots of extra batting and back for your quilt top. And I like to add about 3 to 4 inches on each side. So I make my quilt back and my batting 6 to 8 inches, so 3 to 4 inches in all directions, a little bit bigger on both ways. So I then went ahead and took my batting that I had cut and folded it into quarters. So that's this right here. So I have a fold, I folded it this way and then this way to make quarters. So I have my center point. So I'm going to take my center, and this will be a little tricky holding the camera, and I basically want to align that corner, which is the center, because I folded it in quarters of my batting, with the center of the back. And then I will align that. So let me go ahead and do that. So my batting is in the lower left-hand quadrant of my quilt. And like I said, I matched up that corner with those two pins and just made sure it was nice and parallel. This quilt is easy because of the seams to make the batting parallel to the seams. But if I didn't have so many seams, I could just measure off the edge to make sure it's parallel. Everything is parallel to the table so that everything is nicely aligned. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those pins. And then what I'll do is I'm going to flip using one hand to hold it down. I'm going to flip the batting over, making sure that it stays nice and even so that that bottom quadrant didn't move. Great. And I'll kind of just give it a smooth. It's not quite all wrinkled free, but that's okay. So now I'm going to turn the camera off and I will flip the batting this way. Again, making sure that this doesn't shift, but that it flips. So here, my batting is all opened up. I had just flipped it over, easily kind of holding this down with a hand underneath while I flipped it over. And it's not perfectly smooth, so this is where I take my acrylic ruler and I use the top side, the more slippery side, and put it face down and gently, not with a lot of pressure, and just very gently smooth out. And I always start in the middle and smooth out to all of the edges. So my clamps, if you see a peek underneath, are still under the batting. We're going to take care of those in a minute. But with the clamps still there, I just smooth out. You're not going to be able to get it perfect because those clamps are in the way right now. But just generally, from the middle out, just smooth it out. When it's fairly smooth, and you can use your hand as well. Again, you don't want to apply a lot of pressure because you don't want to shift around. And you don't want to shift around that the quilt back, and you also don't want to stretch anything. So once it's fairly smoothed out, I then go underneath and I gently flip this up, and without moving anything, I remove this clamp. And for the time being, we're going to remove all of the clamps. We're going to go all the way around and gently remove the clamps. Once all the clamps are removed, I can give the batting one good smoothing out all the way to the edges. And again, you can use your hand, a smaller ruler. If it's a bigger table, maybe a bigger ruler, but I like this 12-inch ruler. You could see I have sort of a big wrinkle there. So this I might just adjust a little bit. Again, being very careful. I don't want to move that quilt back, and just smooth out, always from the center out. Once all of the batting looks nice and flat, I'll also go through and kind of pick off any stray threads, any lint. I'll go ahead and I need to put those clamps back on. So now we have the quilt back, the batting, and I'm going to put the clamps back on. And again, I put them equidistant. Be careful you want to make the clamp nice and wide and then clamp down just so you don't give it any wrinkles. And I put it equidistant around the table about every 2 feet or so. If your table is bigger than mine, you may need some more clamps. These are just all plastic, so they're not going to damage anything. And I'm going to go all the way around the table, adding the clamps. Once you've put all your clamps and you made sure that everything, the batting, stayed nice and smooth, you can go ahead and we're going to, again, mark the center with 2 pins. So this one indicates halfway this distance, and this way indicates indicates halfway this distance. I also went ahead and I put another pin here a little bit further down to help me align. So this pin is halfway between this way, and this pin is halfway this way. And we'll see in a minute that'll help with alignment. I also like to use pins, maybe it was a little bit brighter, it's not showing up, but with a bright color head, it just reminds me to remove the pin before I open up the quilt top or open up the batting, because you don't want to get a pin stuck in your quilt sandwich. You'll also want to, like we did with the batting, fold your quilt top into quadrants. So this I folded 4 times, once in half and then again in half the other way. And the bottom left-hand quadrant of my quilt, if I'm looking at it, is on the bottom and the top left is on the top when I fold it. So this will open up properly when we place the quilt on top. So again, I'm going to take this quilt top. You'll want to make sure everything is nicely pressed. Any stray threads are removed that might be bothering you. And we're going to go ahead and, like we did with the batting, we're going to match up that corner with our center point, and this is the center point of the quilt and the center point of the table, and then align it here as well. So let me go ahead and do that. Once that's all into place and I have it centered here, it's aligned here and aligned over here, I could go ahead and remove those pins. This is now the time also to make sure that your quilt top is not bigger than your quilt back or batting. Again, you want some extra room. So I have extra room here. It's a little bit smaller than what I normally have, but it's a smaller quilt, so I think that'll be okay. We'll give it lots of play. And I'm going to go ahead, like I did with the batting, and open it up here. So we'll open it up this way, and I'm going to smooth it out a little bit. Don't have to go crazy, but want to make sure it's staying flat, it's staying parallel, and that way that center, all the centers will be matched up. And now I'm going to go ahead and open it that way. Great. So I have room on the left and the right where the quilt top is definitely smaller. And then if I look here, the clamp is still in the way, but it looks like I'll definitely have extra batting and backing more than a couple of inches more than the quilt. Perfect. So we're gonna, again, like we did with the batting, start in the middle and just smooth out. Again, we don't want to pull it. We just want to remove the wrinkles. We don't want to pull or stretch or shift anything. So using your hand or, again, the top side, the slippery slide of your ruler, we're just going to smooth that out, always working from the center out. And once that's fairly smooth, now we can remove the clamps for good. We're done with the clamps. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the clamp, and I'm going to remove them all the way around. Once all the clamps are removed, once all the clamps are removed, we're going to go ahead and give it one more good smooth out. We want no puckering, no wrinkling. We want a nice well sandwiched quilt. Again, outside, inside out, working from the inside out. All the clamps are removed, so this is a great time to really go through and make sure those right to the table edges are smooth. Sometimes you may see a seam may not be laying as flat as you want. Try to go through and fix it. Sometimes I'll go underneath. Again, you'll have to smooth it out afterwards. And because I have the back and the batting, I'll go through maybe with a light iron. Again, make sure you don't shift it. You're doing this very, very light pressure. And once this is set, it's time for pinning. I went ahead and got my curved quilting pins. So it has a slight little bend to it, which makes it easier to kind of scoop it out. You'll always want, again, everything is from the inside out, and that just allows you to, if you do find any issues, slight air or things that need to be smoothed out, you can get it out towards the edges. So I will identify the center of my quilt and put my first pin in. Great. So you're going to continue to do this. Again, the mantra is from the inside out. And what I typically do is I'll work about 3 fingers, 4 fingers. Now I overpin. I find that when I put less pins in my work, I started to get a lot of puckering and things shifting when I quilted. So I do about 4 fingers lengths, and then I always alter the direction I'm putting my pins. Again, this helps with things shifting as you start wrestling it through a sewing machine as you're quilting. So I'll put my next pin here, and I'm going to put it perpendicular to that first pin. And again, about 4 finger lengths, and that just works really, really well for me. And then I'll go ahead and put it on the other direction too, on the other side of that pin. 4 finger lengths, and then I'll work to the left and the right. What I like to do too is put all the pins in and then close them as one big batch. So just be careful you don't stab yourself doing that. But I find sort of assembly line anything works best. So I'm going to go ahead and continue doing this. And I'm going to want to do the whole, whatever's on the table, and then I'll show you how to do what's left on this side, or if you had a bigger quilt on the other side. Now that all of my safety pins that are on the table right now are fully secured, they're all a few inches apart, fully secured. I used my quick clip to secure them. It really helps save on your fingers. It's this little doodad with these notches that kind of connect with the safety pin and allow you to help kind of push it up and secure it. It's a great tool. I highly recommend it. Now we need to secure the rest of the quilt. So starting on one side, what I do is very gently, and you're going to want to do it fairly slowly and evenly, pull the quilt down the table. So by doing this, the back and the batting will stay fairly secure. You're going to see the top is kind of wrinkly. Not a problem. So I only need to pull it as much as it will sit on the table. So I'm going to go over there and again take my ruler Well, first I'll start with my hand, and then again, gently like we did before, starting in the middle and working my way out, gently smooth it. And if I feel any creases, I'll grab that. Again, if you really need to, you can get your iron and maybe do a quick little press and just smooth it out. Once it's smoothed, I'll secure this side, this piece, with my safety pins. Again, starting in the middle, working out. Once that's done, I'll pull it the other way and do the other side. And if I did have part of the quilt that was overhanging here, I would, again, shift it that only once the safety pins are closed and secure. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. This side is now complete, so I will move down the table. I'm going to shift it again slowly and evenly to the last side. It still needs to be done, and you can see that's pretty wrinkly. No worries, we're just going to go on over there. Like I said, just smooth it out. The top might just need to be adjusted. Just be careful of those the back and the batting. Just be careful of the back and the batting, that doesn't shift too much. Again, working from the inside out. Smooth it out. You can grab the top side of your ruler to do so. Once that's complete, once you're nice and happy and it's nice and smooth, we'll put the rest of the pins in and we'll be ready to quilt. I finished up pinning and closing all the pins this side. I don't have any on this side or on the left side, so I am done. It's now super secure. I'll be able to get it through. I can wrinkle it up and wrestle it through my sewing machine. The back is fully secure. I see all the pins. When you're pinning, you'll just want to make sure that you really get through all of the layers. I do recommend this table. I don't really mind if it gets scratched up, but I would just make sure you protect your table if it's a good dining room table. And so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I really like this method of pinning. I've tried all sorts of things. I've tried on the floor. It hurt my knees. Just for me, it's a really easy way, and I hope that you like it as well. Please check out my website at www.wholecirclestudio.com or find me on Instagram or Facebook, Whole Circle Studio. Have a great day and go make something awesome.